AITA for telling to pay my friend for an initially free wedding cake after she told me it didn't count as a wedding gift. I've known Mary for years, and we've been through a lot together. We met in college, and though we didn't become instant best friends, our bond grew stronger over time. By the time we graduated, we were inseparable. I was there when she met her now fiancé, and she was there when I met my husband. We shared countless laughs, late-night talks, and even some tears. So when Mary asked me to make her wedding cake, I was thrilled. It felt like a way to give something truly special to someone I cared deeply about. To give you some background, I'm 34 years old, pregnant with my second child, and I have a 1-year-old who keeps me on my toes constantly. I'm also working on my second master's degree in education administration because, let's face it, teaching is a dead end without an admin license these days. I'm determined to become a school principal, so juggling school, pregnancy, and motherhood has been no small feat. At the time Mary asked me to make her cake, I was still teaching full-time and finishing up another master's program. It was a lot to handle, but when she asked, I didn't hesitate. I told her I'd be happy to do it, and she offered to pay me. I refused the payment, though, because I wanted it to be my wedding gift to her. I remember saying, "This will be my wedding gift to you," and she seemed genuinely touched by that. We started planning the cake almost immediately. Now, let me tell you, this wasn't going to be some simple cake. Mary had big dreams for her wedding, and the cake was no exception. She wanted a 4-tier masterpiece, with each tier a different flavor: white, chocolate, yellow, and lemon. She also wanted each tier to have different flavored buttercreams: vanilla, chocolate, and lemon. On top of that, she envisioned sugar flowers cascading down the sides, intricate fondant decorations, and even some gold leaf accents. It was going to be stunning but also incredibly time-consuming and expensive to make. But I wasn't worried. I figured I'd have plenty of time since her wedding was in August and school would be out for the summer. Plus, I had just found out I was pregnant a few months before, and I had decided to take a year off from teaching to focus on my pregnancy, my 1-year-old, and my studies. It seemed like the perfect opportunity to give this cake the attention it deserved. Fast forward to this past Saturday, Mary's bachelorette party was in full swing, and even though I couldn't drink, I was having a good time. The party was nothing too crazy, just a bunch of us girls hanging out, laughing, and enjoying each other's company. At some point during the evening, one of Mary's bridesmaids brought up the topic of wedding gifts. We all started talking about what we were getting Mary, and when it was my turn, I mentioned that I was making her wedding cake for free. The reaction was immediate. The bridesmaid who asked looked at me with wide eyes and said, "That's a really generous gift. Wedding cakes are so expensive." The other girls chimed in, agreeing that Mary was lucky to be getting such an amazing gift. One of them even said, "I wish I could have gotten my cake for free when I got married." I felt a little proud, knowing that my gift was something truly special and appreciated by others. But honestly, I didn't think much more of it. The party continued, and we all had a great time. I went home that night feeling good about everything, looking forward to the wedding in just a couple of weeks. Then, this morning, I got a text from Mary that threw me for a loop. She asked me why I wasn't getting her a wedding gift. At first, I was confused. I was getting her a gift, the cake. I responded, reminding her that I was making her wedding cake for free as my gift. But she wasn't having it. She told me that a cake wasn't a real gift. It was a favor. I was stunned. I couldn't believe what I was reading. We had talked about this over a year ago, and she had seemed so grateful at the time. But now, she was telling me that my hard work, time, and expense weren't enough. I didn't know what to say. I tried to explain that the cake was a significant gift, especially given how much effort and money would go into it. But she doubled down, saying that a gift needed to be something she could use in her marriage, not just a cake for the wedding. She even went as far as to say that a real friend would do both, make the cake for free and buy her a separate gift. I was floored. I couldn't believe that she was being so ungrateful and demanding. I reminded her that I was pregnant, not working, and trying to juggle school and motherhood, but she brushed it off, saying that wasn't her problem. At that moment, something snapped inside me. I was done being nice and accommodating. I told her, "Fine, I'll get back to you," and ended the conversation. I spent the next 30 minutes stewing over her words, getting angrier and angrier by the minute. How dare she belittle my gift? How dare she act like my hard work wasn't enough? Finally, I made a decision. If she didn't consider the cake a gift, then it was no longer going to be free. I sat down at my computer and drafted a bill for the cake. I itemized everything: the ingredients, the different flavors and fillings, the sugar, flowers, and fondant decorations. The transportation costs. Her venue is 45 minutes away from my house. The labor my husband helps me deliver the cakes, so I included his time as well, and even a last-minute booking fee. The total came to $700, with a $350 deposit due by Friday and the rest due 24 hours before the event. I sent the bill to Mary, and it didn't take long for her to respond. She was livid. She texted me back, asking what the bill was for, and I told her that since she didn't consider the cake a gift, she needed to pay for it. Her response was immediate and panicked. She couldn't afford it, and it was too late to find another baker. I didn't care. I told her that this was what business looks like and that she could either pay up or find someone else. I knew she was in a bind, but at that point, I was too angry to care. She had taken my generosity and thrown it back in my face, and I wasn't about to let her walk all over me. Mary tried to backtrack, asking if I could just do the cake for free and forget about the gift, but I was done. I told her no, this was the new deal, and if she wanted the cake, she would have to pay for it. I haven't responded to any of her texts since then, and I don't plan to. Apparently, Mary and her fiancé have been venting about me in a group message with the wedding party that I'm not in. One of the bridesmaids, who's also a mutual friend, reached out to me and told me what was being said. She asked me for my side of the story, so I sent her screenshots of our text exchange. Now, the whole bridal party is divided. Some of them think I should go back to doing the cake for free like I originally promised, while others are on my side, saying that Mary was wrong to demand more from me. It's become this huge ordeal, and I never wanted any of this. Mary's fiancé is mad at both of us. He thinks we're being petty and ridiculous, and honestly, I'm starting to agree. But at the same time, I feel like I need to stand my ground. My husband is fully on my side. He thinks Mary can suck an egg, as he put it. He doesn't think I should do the cake or get her a gift at all. He did warn me that this could cost me my friendship with Mary, but he said he would support me either way. I know he's biased because he's never really liked Mary, but his words are sticking with me. Why should I let her push me around? I've been replaying the whole situation over and over in my head, trying to figure out where things went wrong. I keep coming back to that moment at the bachelorette party when the bridesmaid commented on how lucky Mary was to be getting a free cake. Maybe that's what set her off, made her feel like she wasn't getting enough. But that's ridiculous, right? I mean, who complains about getting a free wedding cake? This morning, I was sitting in my kitchen, sipping on some decaf coffee because, pregnancy, when my phone buzzed. It was Pam, one of Mary's bridesmaids and a mutual friend. We hadn't talked much since the whole cake fiasco blew up, so seeing her name pop up immediately put me on edge. I wasn't sure if I was ready for more drama, but curiosity got the better of me, so I opened the message. Pam had reached out to give me an update on the situation with Mary and Frank. And let me tell you, it was a doozy. According to Pam, things had escalated between Mary and Frank in the last 24 hours. Apparently, they had a huge argument last night, and they're not even speaking to each other right now. The argument wasn't directly about the cake, but the cake situation was the catalyst that brought everything else to the surface. Frank had reached his breaking point, and it all came spilling out. Pam's fiancé is one of Frank's groomsmen, so she's been getting the inside scoop from him. From what she told me, Frank has been venting to the groomsmen in their group chat about how much this wedding is costing him. Now, we all knew that Mary's family wasn't contributing much financially, and that Frank and his family were footing most of the bill. But what we didn't know was just how much Mary had been spending. Mary had initially set a budget of $30,000 for the wedding, which is already a pretty significant amount. But according to Frank, she's blown way past that number. She's apparently spent nearly double that, almost $60,000 on everything from intricate floral arrangements to her $5,000 wedding dress, which I knew about because I was there when she bought it. There's also been money spent on decorations, an open bar, a high-end catering service, engagement photos, and even flying her family in and paying for their accommodations. And let's not forget the venue, a massive estate an hour outside of town that's more like a mansion, complete with several acres of land, horses, a lake, and a sprawling field perfect for wedding photos. The whole wedding party is supposed to be staying there for a few days leading up to the wedding. I've only seen the place in photos, but it's obvious why it's so expensive. I was absolutely floored. I had no idea Mary had been spending that much money. As far as I knew, the wedding was expensive but still within reason. We all thought the most extravagant purchase was her dress, but it turns out that was just the tip of the iceberg. And it wasn't just me who was shocked. Pam said that even the other bridesmaids and groomsmen were surprised when they found out. The kicker, Frank wasn't just venting about the cost of the wedding, he was seriously reconsidering the entire marriage. According to Pam, he told the groomsmen that he didn't know if he wanted to go through with it anymore. He felt like Mary had completely disregarded their agreed-upon budget, and he was frustrated that she kept spending more and more money without consulting him. Frank had expected some level of extravagance, but he didn't anticipate the financial strain it would put on him, especially since he's always known Mary to be budget-conscious. Frank is an engineer, and his family has a lot of money, so he can afford it, but that wasn't the point. The point was that Mary had gone overboard, and it was causing serious tension between them. Frank even told the groomsmen that he felt trapped because so much money had already been spent, and most of it was non-refundable. He wasn't sure if he wanted to marry Mary anymore, but he felt like he had no choice because backing out now would be a financial disaster. The whole situation had left him feeling bitter and resentful, which isn't exactly the mindset you want to be in right before getting married. Then, the conversation turned back to the cake. Pam said that Mary had asked Frank to just pay me for the cake so they could move on from the issue, but Frank flat out refused. He wasn't refusing because he couldn't afford it, but because he was fed up with spending money on what he saw as frivolous expenses. He told Mary that if she wanted the cake, she needed to figure it out herself, and he wasn't going to bail her out this time. Hearing all of this left me feeling a strange mix of emotions. On one hand, I was relieved that someone else was finally calling Mary out on her spending. I'd been feeling guilty about standing my ground with the cake, but knowing that Frank was also frustrated made me feel a little less alone. On the other hand, I felt bad that the situation had escalated to the point where their entire relationship was in jeopardy. I never wanted things to get this bad, and it was clear that the wedding was now hanging by a thread. Pam didn't have much else to add, but she did make an interesting point. She reminded me that I was only hearing Frank's side of the story through the groomsmen. Pam said she had no idea what Mary's perspective was or how much of this she even knew about. For all we knew, Frank could have been bottling up his frustrations and never really talked to Mary about the budget until now. It's possible that she had no idea how much stress this was causing him, or maybe she thought everything was fine because Frank never said otherwise. Pam told me that while she didn't condone Mary's spending, she didn't want to jump to conclusions about her intentions either. Pam's words made me pause and think. I'd known Mary for years, and this whole situation seemed so out of character for her. She'd always been frugal, even when she didn't need to be. She drove an old car that she refused to replace, even though Frank had offered to buy her a new one multiple times. She was the type to shop for off-brand items and clip coupons, so hearing that she was now spending tens of thousands of dollars on a wedding was jarring. But then again, weddings have a way of bringing out a different side of people. I remember when I got married, I wanted everything to be perfect too. My husband had told me that he wanted me to have whatever made me happy for our wedding, and I'd taken that to heart. Maybe Frank had said something similar to Mary, and she'd run with it, not realizing how much it was affecting him. Or maybe she was just caught up in the excitement and didn't stop to think about the consequences. Either way, it was clear that something had shifted in their relationship, and it wasn't for the better. As the day went on, I found myself checking my phone more often, half expecting Mary to reach out to me. But the hours passed, and there was no word from her. It was now 6 p.m., and I still hadn't heard anything. The silence was deafening, and it only added to the uncertainty of the situation. Would there even be a wedding at this point? And if there was, would I still be making the cake? I had no idea what to expect anymore. My husband came home from work and immediately noticed that something was off. I filled him in on the latest developments, and he just shook his head in disbelief. He reiterated that he was still on Team Mary can suck an egg and that he didn't think I should make the cake or get her a gift at all. He reminded me that this whole mess wasn't my fault, and that I had every right to stand up for myself. He also pointed out that if Frank was having doubts about the marriage, then maybe it was better for them to address those issues now rather than after the wedding. He was trying to be supportive, but I could tell he was just as frustrated as I was with the whole situation. It was so strange to think that Mary, of all people, might be going through something so tumultuous. For as long as I'd known her, she'd always been the one to keep a level head. If something was wrong, she was the one who calmly figured it out and dealt with it. The idea that she was now potentially wrapped up in some drama-filled disaster of a wedding, and that I was somehow caught in the middle of it, felt surreal. By the time I went to bed, I still hadn't heard from Mary, and the silence was starting to feel oppressive. I checked her social media again, hoping for some kind of update, but there was nothing new. The last post was still the long, heartfelt apology for postponing the wedding, but what really caught my attention this time was the location tag. Mary had gone back to her parents' house in her hometown, far away from the city where she and Frank lived. That detail stuck with me, making the whole situation feel even more serious. Why would she leave like that unless things were really bad? The next morning, I woke up to a message from Pam. It was short, just asking if I had time to chat. I quickly responded that I did, and within minutes, Pam was calling me. Her voice was hushed, like she was trying to keep the conversation private, even though she was at home. "I just got off the phone with Mary," she said, skipping any pleasantries. "She's staying with her parents for a while." "Did she say why?" I asked, already knowing this conversation was about to get heavy. Pam took a deep breath. "Yeah, she told me everything. And honestly, it's worse than we thought." She started to explain how, from the very beginning, Mary had been trying to save money on the wedding, despite Frank pushing for something more extravagant. Apparently, Frank's family was known for their over-the-top celebrations, and he'd been adamant that their wedding had to be just as grand. But while Frank had all these expectations, he hadn't lifted a finger to help plan or make decisions. Instead, he told Mary to do what she's good at, meaning saving money. The contradiction in his demands was exhausting for Mary, who was trying to please Frank while staying within a reasonable budget. Pam went on to describe how Mary had initially wanted to book a more affordable venue, like a hotel that hosted weddings. It would have been cheaper for her family and easier to manage. But Frank had vetoed that idea, insisting they needed something big and impressive. That's how they ended up with the mansion, a decision that was entirely Frank's, despite him claiming he didn't want to spend a lot of money. He even had opinions on the smallest details, Pam continued, her voice filled with frustration. Like, Mary told me he was picking out the decorations, but then would complain that they were too expensive or not fancy enough. He wouldn't even let her choose her own bouquet, without making sure it was big and flashy. It's like nothing she did was ever good enough. Hearing all this made my heart ache for Mary. It sounded like she was trapped in a no-win situation, trying to satisfy Frank's impossible standards while still being true to herself. But the most shocking part was yet to come. Pam paused for a moment before delivering the next piece of information, as if bracing herself. "The thing with the cake," she said slowly, "that was Frank too. He found out that you were making it as a gift and told Mary it didn't count because it wasn't real, that friends doing favors wasn't the same as a proper gift. He actually pressured her to ask you to charge for it." My jaw dropped. "Are you serious?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The cake had been my way of contributing to Mary's special day, and now it was being used as a point of contention. "Yeah, and apparently, that was the last straw for Mary," Pam said. She'd been looking forward to the cake because it was the one thing she felt like she had control over. When you said she'd have to pay for it, Frank blew up on her, accusing her of not saving them money. That led to a huge fight, and they stopped talking after that. The pieces were starting to fall into place, and the picture they painted wasn't pretty. Frank had been making Mary's life miserable with his contradictory demands and his passive-aggressive behavior. He wanted a lavish wedding without spending the money, And when Mary couldn't perform miracles, he blamed her for it. And the worst part was that he hadn't been honest with anyone, not with Mary, not with his groomsmen, not even with himself. Pam's voice softened as she shared the final bit of information. Mary found out about the text Frank sent to the groomsmen, where he was making her out to be this greedy person. She was devastated. That's why she left. She told me she felt like he was trying to ruin her reputation just to make himself look better. I was speechless. Mary was one of the kindest, most genuine people I knew, and the idea that Frank had been dragging her name through the mud was infuriating. I couldn't imagine how betrayed she must have felt. She's not sure what she's going to do yet, Pam continued. She told me she needs time to think, but for now, the wedding is definitely off. She's not even sure if she wants to stay in the relationship. I nodded, even though Pam couldn't see me. That's understandable. I mean, how do you come back from something like this? Pam sighed. I don't know, but one thing's for sure, Frank isn't the person we all thought he was. And Mary deserves better than this. Am I AITA for saying to pay for the wedding cake and now they're fighting over it?